Princess of the Empire, had seen many warriors throughout her 300 years of life. She had watched the elite soldiers of her own kind, beings of pure light and energy who could burn through metal with a single thought. She had observed the mechanical precision of the war machines and the savage fury of the berserkers. She believed she understood what it meant to be a warrior. She believed she understood loyalty. But nothing in her long existence had prepared her for what she would witness on the burning fields of Seven. The diplomatic mission had gone wrong from the very beginning. What should have been a simple negotiation with the collective had turned into an ambush. The collective, those hive-minded creatures that consumed everything in their path, had set a trap that even her royal guard had not anticipated. Within minutes of landing, her ship was destroyed, her guards were overwhelmed, and she found herself running through an alien jungle with only a small group of survivors. Among those survivors were 5 humans. Had heard stories about humans, of course. Every species in the known galaxy had heard stories about them. They were a young race, having only achieved space travel a mere 2 centuries ago. They were fragile, with soft skin and bones that broke easily. They lived for such short periods that most species considered them barely more than children playing at being adults. And yet somehow, they had carved out a place for themselves among the stars. Somehow, they had earned a seat at the Galactic Council. Had always wondered how such weak creatures had accomplished so much in so little time. She was about to find out. The human squad was led by a woman named Commander Sarah. She was small, even by human standards, with dark hair pulled back in a tight knot and eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. When the ambush happened, once guards fell and chaos erupted around them, it was Commander who had grabbed the princess and pulled her to safety. It was Commander who had organized the survivors and led them into the jungle. There were 4 other humans with her. Sergeant was a giant of a man with dark skin and hands that looked like they could crush stone. Private First Class had a nervous energy about her, always checking her weapon, always scanning the trees. Corporal James Wright was quiet, his face from some previous battle, his movements calm and deliberate. And then there was Private Tommy, the youngest of the group, barely more than a boy, with a smile that seemed out of place in such a dangerous situation. For 3 days, they moved through the jungle, trying to reach the emergency beacon that would signal for rescue. The collective hunted them every step of the way, watched as the humans fought off attack after attack. She watched as they used their strange projectile weapons to cut down enemies that her own guards had failed to stop. She watched as they worked together with a coordination that seemed almost instinctive. But it was on the 4th day that everything changed. They had almost reached the beacon when the collective found them in force. Hundreds of the creatures poured through the trees, their clicking sounds filling the air like a horrible song. Commander immediately began giving orders, her voice calm despite the terror of the situation. She directed her squad to form a defensive perimeter around the princess. The battle was brutal, had never seen anything like it. The humans fought with a ferocity that shocked her. Sergeant stood like a mountain, his weapon never stopping, his body taking hits that would have killed any instantly. Moved like water sliding between positions, her shots precise and deadly. Wright was a ghost, appearing and disappearing, each movement bringing death to another enemy. And young Tommy, that boy who always smiled, fought with a determination that belied his years. Then the worst happened. A collective warrior broke through the line. Its clawed hand slashed across Commander's leg, tearing through armor and flesh. She went down with a cry of pain, blood pooling beneath her. The creature raised its arm to deliver the killing blow. Moved before anyone could react, he threw himself between the creature and his commander, taking the strike meant for her. The impact sent him flying, his chest torn open, his blood mixing with the alien soil. But even as he fell, he was still firing, still fighting, still protecting. Screamed something in her native tongue and ran to side. She stood over his fallen body, her weapon blazing, tears streaming down her face even as she killed enemy after enemy. Wright was there too, dragging to cover while returning fire with his free hand. But it was Tommy who truly showed what human loyalty meant. The young soldier saw that the enemy was about to overwhelm them. He saw that his friends, his family, were about to die. And without hesitation, without a single moment of doubt, he grabbed a device from his belt and ran straight into the heart of the collective force. Commander screamed at him to stop, tried to grab him, but Tommy was already gone, disappearing into the mass of enemies. The explosion that followed was blinding. It tore through the collective ranks, killing dozens of them in an instant. When the light faded and the smoke cleared, there was nothing left of Private Tommy except a crater in the ground and a memory that would haunt for the rest of her immortal life. The remaining collective forces retreated, their hive mind confused by the sudden loss of so many members. In the silence that followed, found herself standing among the humans as they gathered around the crater where their friend had stood. Was alive barely, was working on his wounds, her hands shaking, her tears falling on his torn chest. Wright stood guard, his eyes constantly moving, his jaw clenched so tight it seemed his teeth might shatter. And Commander, despite her own terrible injury, had dragged herself to the edge of the crater. Watched as the commander reached into the crater and pulled out Tommy's dog tags, the only thing that remained of him. She watched as the woman pressed those tags to her lips and whispered something too quiet for even ears to hear. Then Commander turned to her squad and spoke. Her voice was steady despite everything. She told them that Tommy knew what he was doing. She told them that he made his choice so that they could live. She told them that the best way to honor him was to complete the mission, to get Princess to safety, and to make sure that his sacrifice meant something. Expected the humans to fall apart. She expected them to be consumed by grief, to become useless, to give up. That was what would have happened to any other species she knew. But the humans did not fall apart. They picked up their weapons. They carried their wounded, and they continued forward. It took another 2 days to reach the beacon. 2 days of fighting, of running, of surviving against impossible odds. Should have died 100 times over, but his teammates refused to let him. They took turns carrying him when he could not walk. They shared their blood with him when he had lost too much of his own. They talked to him constantly, telling jokes, sharing memories, keeping him anchored to life through the sheer force of their will. When they finally reached the beacon and the rescue ships arrived, was a different person than the princess who had landed on 7. She had seen something that she could not explain, something that everything she thought she knew about the universe. She had seen humans refuse to abandon each other, even when abandonment would have been the logical choice. She had seen them risk their lives, sacrifice their lives, for comrades they had known for only a short time. She had seen a young soldier smile as he ran to his death because he knew that his death would give his friends a chance to live. As the rescue ship carried them to safety, sat beside Commander and asked her a question that had been burning in her mind since she witnessed Tommy's sacrifice. She asked why. Why did the humans fight so hard for each other? Why did they value their comrades more than their own lives? Why did Tommy die for people he had only known for a few years, a blink of an eye in the of most galactic species? Commander was quiet for a long moment. Then she spoke, and her words were simple, but they carried the weight of everything had witnessed. She said that humans knew they were weak. She said they knew they were small and fragile and short-lived. She said they knew that alone they were nothing in the vast universe, but together they were something more. Together they were strong. And that bond, that loyalty, that love for their comrades, that was what made them human. That was what made them willing to fight against impossible odds. That was what made them willing to die for each other. Because when a human stood beside their comrades, they were not afraid to die. They were only afraid of failing the people who stood beside them. Return to her empire changed. She went before the council and told them what she had witnessed. She told them about the humans, about their loyalty, about their willingness to sacrifice everything for each other. She told them that the galaxy had underestimated these young creatures for far too long. The other council members laughed at first. They did not believe that such weak creatures could be worthy of such praise, but had seen the truth with her own eyes. She had stood beside humans in battle. She had watched them bleed and die for each other. And she knew that if any species in the galaxy was going to rise to greatness, it would be humanity. Because strength was not about power. It was not about living for thousands of years or bending energy to your will. Strength was about standing beside your comrades when everything seemed lost. Strength was about refusing to abandon the people who trusted you. Strength was about a young soldier named Tommy who smiled as he ran to his death because he knew his friends would live. Years later, when the collective launched their final assault on the Galactic Alliance, it was the humans who led the defense. And standing beside them, fighting with them, was Princess of the Empire, because she had learned something on Seven that she would never forget. She had learned that there was no greater warrior than a human fighting for their comrades, and she had learned that there was no greater honor than to stand beside them.